right, welcome to SPSS Lab 1 for EDLR 7311. For this lab, for this initial lab, you are going to work on what we call data screening using graphs and frequencies, and also we're going to look at outliers using what we call z-scores. Data screening is just kind of a fancy way to say we're just trying to take kind of a snapshot, a look at our data that we've collected, make sure everything looks okay. There's no, no weird data in there. Things didn't get inputted wrong before we go on to do our more formal analysis. This is a really important step before we don't want to just dive right in and do our analyses that are going to answer our research questions. So just a quick note, the data set that I'm going to be using for this demonstration is not the data set that you're using. I'm using this purely for demonstration purposes. So when you open your data set in SPSS for this lab, it will not look exactly like what I have here. So just keep in mind that. So again, you're going to be doing some data screening. We're going to be looking at graphs, frequencies, z-scores, and so I'll kind of walk through each of those elements, and hopefully that'll assist you in understanding and completing the assignment. So just to quick orient you to the data set, as in most data sets, we have kind of a mix of variables. This is a data set that actually includes both characteristics of the sample, so things like gender, ethnicity, what class, like freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and then what we call categorical variables, so people can be classified into categories, again, like gender, male, female, ethnicity, the different categories, class, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and then we have a set of data or variables that we call continuous variables, and these are variables that usually follow a distribution in which the values actually matter in terms of where you place. So, for example, in GPA, those who have a higher GPA are stronger academically than those who don't. IQ is on a distribution, what we call a continuous distribution, with a median, what we'll talk about next week, or an average score, and then a distribution around that. And so we're gonna do some different analyses to look at these different variables. In this case, we've got IQ, GPA, we've got some test scores. Again, this is from a college level statistics course and some data on a group of students. In this data set, you can see there are about 112. There are 112 in the data set. Just as a reminder, you have both data view and variable view in SPSS. So variable view actually tells you what the variable is, gives you some information. Oftentimes the label, so again, gender, what is your gender, what is your ethnicity? And one of the nice things about this is for those categorical variables where we're using like 1 to equal one group, 2 to equal another, we can add those values here. We can actually put these in here. So for example, you can see if it's a 1, it's a male, 2 female. That could be in any order. You could use 0, 1, 1, 2. You could use any numbers you want. It's just a placeholder, but anything in this data set that's a 1 under gender is a male, 2 female. You can see the same thing under ethnicity. So if it's 1, white, 2, black or African American, and so on. Just the numbers are arbitrary. It's just used as a category for these specific characteristics. Again, that's why we call them categorical variables. So one of the first things you're going to do for this assignment is, and we're going to talk about here, is just how to graph these data. So let's start with the categorical variables. So if you wanted to graph and just get a sense of the frequency or what, how the distribution or what the numbers look like, how frequent males, how frequent females, and so on, I'm simply going to use this graphs. I'm going to go up to this graphs. And in this case, since it's categorical, you can use either a bar graph or a pie graph. So for example, I could use a bar graph. I just can use the simple. You'll hit define. You'll get a box that looks like this. For example, I already have gender in there. I can move things around. Let's say I wanted to do ethnicity. I move it over, make sure it's in the category, and if I hit OK, you can see that it produces a nice little bar graph that shows you the count up the side, so how many of that 112. So you can see it's predominantly white students, and then the other race and ethnicities along spectrum here. I could also do the same thing. Let's say I wanted to do that for gender. I can just come back here, take this one out, go to gender, hit OK, and again you can see that you produce a nice graph. The other one, sometimes people like a pie graph. You can do very similar. I could go back to graph, I can hit pie. I'm just going to use groups of cases. You're going to get a pop-up that looks like this. You can see I already have ethnicity in there. So let me just put it, actually let's do gender. I'll put it back here. So my slices are by gender. Again, probably in most cases you'd use that when you have more than 2 slices, so to speak, but you can do it with 2 as well. I can hit OK. And look, you can see this. Now you may say, well, what if it doesn't give me any numbers here? I don't have any legend. So here's one way to quickly address that. You can actually double click and you're going to get a little pull up like this. And if you go to elements and where it says show data labels, you're going to get a little drop down like this. And if you can, in this case, it just shows you the count. So 65 were female, 47 were male. If you actually want the percent, you can just click the little percent button and put it up and hit apply. And now you see you not only have the counts, but you also have the percentages, which obviously are going to equal 100. So again, you can do either a bar graph or a pie graph when we're looking at what we call categorical, which is something that maybe has 2 categories, 3 categories, 4, sometimes even 5, like in race, ethnicity, in this data set. So I'm going to just go ahead and close these out. Come back here. So again, we've got bar graphs. We've also have our pie graphs. So that's one way to look at categorical data. You may say, well, what if I just want a table? What if I don't necessarily want the graph, but I just want a table for these variables so I know how many or what percent were in each category. Those are called descriptive statistics and actually called frequencies. And so the way to do that is you're going to go to this Analyze drop down. So if I click Analyze and drop to Descriptive Statistics, and then you can come over here and you see where it says frequencies. So it's just going to tell us how frequent either the males or females, or how frequent white, Hispanic, African American, and so on. So if I click frequencies, you'll see a box that looks like this. And let's start with race ethnicity. So I can just move that over. And if I hit OK, there you go. You see this nice little table right here. It tells you how many and what percent. So we're really focusing on these first 2 columns here. So 71, so 63% of the whole group of 112. You can see, so it'll add up to 100%. So that's a quick way to do that. But a couple of things I want to just show you related to frequencies. You don't, let's say you want to do that. I want to look at all my variables, and I don't want to just do one at a time. You can actually enter them all in at the same time. So if I go back to descriptives and back to frequencies, let me just take this out. But look, for example, I can click on gender and move that over. I can put ethnicity over there. I can put your year in school over there, all 3 of those, and hit OK. And look, I just got 3 tables, one for gender, one for ethnicity, one for year in school. So it saves you time if you enter all your variables in at once, in this case, all of the categorical variables that you were interested in at once, not rather than doing them one at a time. And one other quick shortcut. So earlier I showed you how to do these graphs using the graph dropdown. And then here I showed you how to get these tables using the Analyze. Well, you can actually do both at the same time. So let me go back and using that frequency command. So if I go back here, descriptives, frequencies, I already have those in there, you see, just like I did. But if you go click here on this little button that says charts, let's say I wanted a bar chart, and you could also obviously chose pie chart. Well, those would be probably your 2 best options for these type of variables. So if I wanted a bar chart, I can hit continue and I can hit OK. And again, it gave me all of my tables again, just like before, but now it also created my graphs. So you can use, by using this function, Analyze, Descriptives, and Frequencies, you can get not only the tables, but you can also get whatever graph you want. So that would be a first step in order to just look at your categorical variables, just looking at kind of the distribution, what was male to female, what does the race ethnicity look like. Also, this would be an important step because what if for some reason there had been another code? So I think 1 was male, 2 was female. Let's say somehow somebody had accidentally typed in 3 and you saw a category here underneath here that just said 3 because it wouldn't have male or female next to it. And you would go, oh, somehow there's some data that's not right because this data only would have male or female. Or for example, race ethnicity was 1 through 5. Let's say somehow somebody had typed in a 10 or a 6 into the data set when they were entering. Well, that would show up here and you would know, oh, that doesn't fit into one of those categories. That is not data that we're going to use. We're going to ignore that particular data point because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit. And the same thing with year in school. Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, and somebody had typed in 5. That's going to come up as another category, and obviously we know that doesn't fit into one of our 4 categories. So that's part of the data screening process of just understanding what your data looks like. So not only can I get a sense of who or what the category, the distribution, or I guess the more the frequencies, both visually and in table form of my categorical variables, I can also use this as a way to kind of screen and make sure there's no data in there that maybe just doesn't make sense. So that would be your very first step with the categorical variables. And in the future video or in the next video, I'm going to show you how to do this and how to do some data screening with our continuous variables using a few other methods.